You are tuned in to the Smart Behaviors Radio Show with Joe Takish. If you have a question or comment about the program, please send your emails to joe@victoryconsulting.com. That's joe@victoryconsulting.com. Now, back to the Smart Behaviors Radio Show.
All right, welcome back to Smart Behaviors. We are talking to Steve Gavatorta. Steve is an outstanding speaker, coach, consultant. He is a certified professional behavioral analyst, former football player in college, which we're going to get to before we end this show. But the first thing, Steve, is tell our listeners where they can find out. I know you work coast to coast. Most of the time you hang your hat in California.
No, actually Tampa, Florida.
Oh, Tampa, Florida.
It's by the water. It's just the Atlantic instead of the Pacific.
Oh, I see. All right. So you're Tampa-based.
Yes.
Buccaneer country. Where did you grow up? Where are you from originally?
Originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and started my corporate career. I grew up and went to college near Pittsburgh, and through my corporate life have lived in Detroit, Tampa, Dallas, New Jersey, and most recently, before moving back to Tampa, Manhattan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy, you are like a metropolitan man.
Absolutely.
Are you a Steeler fan?
What's that?
Are you a Steeler fan?
I absolutely am. I'm a big-time Steeler fan. I'm not as much into pro football as I am college, but when it comes to pro football, yes, I am a diehard black and gold guy. So.
All right, so one more football question
Sure.
For now. Are you Happy Valley or are you Pitt Panther?
Always been a Penn State guy. I never liked the Pitt Panthers. I hope I'm not insulting any Pittsburgh folks out there, but I am more of a Penn State fan.
You're a Joe Pa guy.
Absolutely.
How can our listeners find out a little bit more about you and your business?
Sure. I would recommend checking out my website, www.gavatorta.com. You can see my listings on Facebook. I tweet. And I have many videos on YouTube as well, too. So I think if you just do a Google search on my name, you'll find those other areas. But the best place is ultimately my website, www.gavatorta.com. Don't hesitate to reach out to me via phone, or which you can find on the website, or email me, steve@gavatorta.com.
Outstanding. Nice, honest, conversational plug. All right, let's get back into the trust issue. Talk about trust in today. I mean, here's the one thing I don't like about the economy. People use it almost as a spin-selling process. In today's economy, this is what's got to happen. And it gets to a point where it's starting to fall on deaf ears.
Sure.
But make a differentiation if you can, or push back and say there isn't a differentiation. It's always a foundational element of successful relationships. But is there a distinction between trust now and what it was when the market was hot in 2000 to 2005?
Sure. I think it goes beyond the market, what's happening in the marketplace. I think, simply put, we are in a fast-paced, high-tech, low-touch world. We're doing a lot of our communicating via emails, text messaging, social media sites, which they're fine methods of communication, but they can't substitute for that one-on-one human dynamic, those relationships, so to speak. So you're not going to be able to establish trust, long-term trusting relationships via emailing, via text messaging, things of that nature. And I think that leaves a big gap for trust in business. If you're not connecting face-to-face or one-on-one with your customers, you are not going to establish that trust. You're not going to have long-term loyal relationships. The key word now is customer loyalty. You are not going to build loyalty without trust, and you're not going to build trust via social media sites and text messaging and things of that nature. Again, they're great tools for communicating, but for the mode of establishing trust, there's better ways.
Okay, so I've often been labeled by clients and colleagues as the behavior drill sergeant, the behavior Nazi. To me, it's what you're doing, not what you think, what you say. And I think I'm not saying those are not important, but they pale by comparison to what you're doing. So if I'm going to observe trust being established, what are some of the things, and I'll give you one example. I have a better chance of establishing trust with you, Steve Gavatorta, if I live my word, meaning I do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. That's one behavior that I think can build a pathway for trust.
Absolutely.
What are other things people can do to help build trust and feel more confident that they're getting on that side of the equation for loyalty and success in the workplace?
Sure. It is aligning to behaviors. It is aligning and understanding someone else's points of view. Listen, we talk about customer loyalty, which is essentially about aligning your capabilities with your customer needs, so to speak, not selling them something or giving them something they don't want. You should be solving their problems, finding out what's keeping them up at night, and then relating that and solving for those problems. The same goes for human dynamics and building trust. You've got to find out more about the people you're interfacing with and better align to those people to build that relationship and build that trust. As I said, if I'm in a relationship with someone who's risk averse and doesn't like change, if I'm trying to stuff something down their throat that makes them feel uncomfortable about taking change or making risk, I'm never going to have that trusting relationship. But if I can understand someone's fears of maybe accepting a new product or taking the leap, if I'm managing someone, taking the leap to take a suggestion, if I acknowledge that fear, if I acknowledge that fear of change, of taking risk, and minimize that, I'm going to build that connection and bridge that gap and help that person trust me a little bit more. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And as you say that, Steve, one of the things that resonates with me is you yourself have to be trusting.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, in other words, a lot of people, I'll go back to what I said 10 minutes ago, which was if you've been through a string of relationships, or, we could get as deep as we want, which we'll do in a few minutes with Calvin, our executive coach and therapist, and if someone had a bad childhood and not a trusting relationship with a sibling or a cousin or, even more intensely a parent, that's something that could affect trust in the workplace big time, correct?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And that's where, when I talk about, or you had mentioned, that introspective side of understanding your behaviors, that's where that comes in helpful. Understanding my behavior style has helped me understand maybe the positive side of trust that I exhibit or some of the negatives where I'm not as trusting of a person. So that introspective side, understanding your behaviors, help you understand how better you will be at being trusting as well, too.
Okay, let me ask you this. This one jumps out at me. Is it possible to build trust with someone who is not trustworthy?
Yeah, that's first thing I want to say about that is all relationships are not created equal, and you're not going to be able to have equally successful relationships. Some of them just aren't going to resonate. And if someone isn't a trustworthy person, you may never have that relationship that you want with them, and you may have to walk from that. I mean, take personal relationships, whether it be your girlfriend or spouse. If there's not trust there, that isn't the relationship's going to manifest as deep as it can be. So sometimes you may have to walk from a relationship where that foundation isn't there. Because that foundation is not there, it's not going to be as successful as it could be, so to speak. But what I would recommend is doing everything in your power to establish as much trust with someone else as you can. If you've done the job of understanding their behavior, reading and adapting to the best of your ability, you've done all that you can do to build that trust. If the person doesn't reciprocate, maybe then that relationship just isn't quite worth what it should be or what you want it to be, so to speak.
See, this makes me go back to, number one, the reality of, again, you're listening to Smart Behaviors. We're talking to Steve Gavatorta, and we're on our home stretch here, Steve, so I want to get right to the point of some people you have to walk from, but I feel like you've got to fire every bullet in the gun of effort. And in so doing, I think sometimes if you just listen to people, so many people want their story to be heard, and very few people are willing to be that others-centered, that patient, stray away from, as cynical as it might sound, their own self-interest. But I find that if I put a timer on who I speak with, and if I let them, I know it's the 80-20 rule, but if I let them speak 80% of the time and really listen to them and value them, not because I'm going to get business, but I'm ultimately going to get business and win them over because I know I'm interested in who they are, not just what I do. What are your thoughts around that?
I couldn't agree with you more. When again, going back to that three-step phase of learn, read, and adapt, the second piece of that, read, is exactly what you're talking about. When I say read others, it means listen, be in the moment, and seek to understand rather than be understood. Hear what they're saying. And when you read, when you truly listen to hear what someone else is saying, you're going to glean more information and learn significantly more about them that's going to help you make connections later down the road. So I think that is another skill set that's truly lacking in our society today, is effective actually listening skills and effective questioning skills as well, too, which could be another topic down the road.
Yeah, and I'd like to bring you back for that because I'm a huge piece of how do you facilitate and get people to open up because you often control the conversation. We're down to our final minute. Here's what I'm going to ask you. Give me 10 seconds or 15 seconds on your successful football career and how trust in a team setting has helped what you do today.
Sure. I was actually a Gator, and it was not a Florida Gator. It was called Allegheny College. I was a defensive back at Allegheny College, and it was a fantastic experience. It's Division III, and trust again. Football is a great sport because you have 11 people doing different jobs that ultimately have to move as one. So trust, especially on a football field, I think is of the utmost importance because you have to rely on what all those other 10 folks are doing so that one group moves as one. So trust is unbelievably important on the football field. If you don't have trust on the team, your team's not going to be as successful.
What was your position?
Defensive back.
D-back. All right.
Yeah.
We've been talking to Steve Gavatorta. Visit Gavatorta.com to learn more about Steve's services. He's a great guy. Steve, would you come on the show another time?
Without a doubt.
And we'll do those questioning skills. You're listening, I'm listening too, to Smart Behaviors. We'll be back doing the deep dive with the Calvinator, Steve Gavatorta. Thank you for being on the show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.